Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 19 of my Joseph Losey season. We're in 1968, and we're in The Secret Ceremony. This is Indicator number 155. This is a wonderful release from Indicator, which I'll get into later. And this is a strange film. Now, if you thought Boom was a strange film, which I have featured in the last episode of the Joseph Losey series, then Secret Ceremony is quite strange too. This is the second of two collaborations with Elizabeth Taylor, and as if the lack of success with Boom didn't put the nail in the coffin of the professional relationship between Taylor and Losey, Secret Ceremony fired that nail along with the coffin into space, and that was the end of their professional career. Taylor had wanted Richard Burton to be Dirk Bogartified by Losey, but that didn't quite work out. The film stars Liz Taylor, strangely enough, and Mia Farrow, with Robert Mitchum, Peggy Ashcroft and Pamela Brown. Wonderful Pamela Brown from Powell and Pressburger fame, amongst other things. Burton at one point was on the set and was hoping that Robert Mitchum would be fired so he could play the Robert Mitchum character, because Robert Mitchum and Losey didn't really get on that much, apparently. This is based on a short story. It's fairly claustrophobic. There literally is only those characters and those actors in the film. There's not a lot of external or extra characters in the film. There is in a TV cut that was released 3 years later, because obviously this film was a box office disaster as well, as quite a lot of Losey films were. And the Indicator release has these additional TV scenes that were done without Losey's permission, and it's basically that end of Psycho explanation. So there's a scene at the start, there's a scene at the end, where a barrister and psychiatrist pretty much explain what's happened in the film, in case you can't work it out for yourself. So Indicator do a wonderful job, as they do, being completists sometimes, with different cuts of films and things like that. So they've included those scenes, which are hard to watch. It's obvious it's been shot in America in a studio, in a TV studio somewhere, with two non-name actors. No offence to those non-name actor families. But again, it's a fascinating little look at how the studio thought, let's try and explain this film by adding a beginning and an ending. So we're introduced to Liz Taylor's character, dressed in black. She goes down Mary Magdalene Street and into a church. She gets on a bus, and Mia Farrow's on the bus, also dressed in black, with lots of lovely black hair. And she sits down beside Liz Taylor and starts to cry. And strangely enough, Liz Taylor is a little bit uncomfortable with that. And Mia Farrow follows her to a graveyard, where we see Liz Taylor looking at a gravestone of a girl who drowned. She sees Mia Farrow. We get a nice Sergio Leone close-up of her eyes. and Liz Taylor feels unwell, and Mia Farrow takes her back to this amazing house. I mean, the production design, I mean, granted the house was an actual house, but they shot some of the bedrooms in the studio because the rooms weren't that big in the house. Lots of tiling and art deco, and obviously production designer Richard McDonald is a Losey regular. Always furnishes Losey sets with mirrors, one of Losey's trademarks, and pieces of art and little knickknacks. But the house itself, with the tiling and the glass, stained glass doors, I mean, it's an amazing location. And the two characters who may have things going on in their lives start playing this role-playing game as Mia Farrow's character thinks that Liz Taylor is her long-lost mother, and Liz Taylor obviously starts projecting that Mia Farrow is her daughter. You know, she knows she's not, because Liz Taylor is getting food that she voraciously devours. You know, we initially see Liz Taylor in this little bed sit essentially, and again, we are throughout the process of the film, we do kind of get the idea that perhaps she is a sex worker, and that's why there's a Mary Magdalene Street reference, obviously. You know, this religious iconography as well in the film. But she sees all these outfits and this amazing wardrobe and the mink coats, and so she thinks she'll maybe hang about for a little while, because she's got nowhere else to go. She's a broken person. Mia Farrow's a broken person. So we have this strange relationship. Mia Farrow's father has died, but she has a stepfather, Albert, played by Robert Mitchum, and his crazy beard without a moustache, who is a real piece of work and has probably taken liberties with the father-daughter relationship. When we find out what age he came into Mia Farrow's life. I mean, obviously Mia Farrow has had some interesting, to say the least, men in her life. She had shot Rosemary's Baby at this time, but it hadn't actually come out yet, so she wasn't quite the star that she was about to become. She currently was in a relationship with Frank Sinatra at the time, who apparently was treating her very badly. Obviously, she did Rosemary's Baby with Polanski, who we all know his history, and then obviously later she would get involved with Woody Allen, and we all know their relationship and their history. So under that long black wig, she had her short hair from Rosemary's Baby. Mia Farrow gives a wonderful performance. Apparently there were 17 female actors kind of auditioned for the role, but Liz Taylor knew Mia Farrow's dad, John Farrow, so she kind of recommended Mia Farrow, who is sensational in the film. So we have Mia Farrow slowly regressing back to her trauma, especially once Robert Mitchum turns up, and Robert Mitchum is playing a character who is really repellent. It's amazing he actually agreed to play it, because I'm sure lots of actors would just refuse to play it. The language that comes out of his mouth, it's a really uncomfortable performance, and lots of uncomfortable scenes, especially in the kitchen with Mia Farrow. The film Again, lots of people called Boom camp, which it's not. It's a deadly serious film that's just performed perhaps up to 11, especially by Elizabeth Taylor. I would say Secret Ceremony is more of a film that has some hysterical scenes, but I wouldn't call it camp particularly. It is quite a disturbing film that I did appreciate more the second time I watched it, and I appreciated more because it has a commentary by Dean Brandom and Alexandra Heller-Nicholas from 2019, which is absolutely wonderful, and I would recommend you listen to it because there are paintings in the film that have deeper meaning to the story once you find out what those paintings are about. Mia Farrow's character name has significance in relation to what happens in the story, because it's a character name from another story from the past that takes on relevance. So not only is it a very entertaining commentary as far as being funny, Heller-Nicholas is a big fan of this film, and Boom. So it also has some insight into the art that is in the film, as well as just being a fun commentary. There's an archive interview with Joseph Losey on French television. There's an interview with Gavrik Losey, his son. Again, you get the TV versions, and obviously there's a booklet. So I would highly recommend the Indicator release, because it's a commentary that does actually enrich your viewing and the knowledge of the film. Inevitably things go off the rails somewhat, and again it just is so well done and it looks so amazing. As I mentioned, you get Peggy Ashcroft and Pamela Brown as two gold digging aunts who run an antique shop and pretty much just want the inheritance. They come round and steal little objects when Mia Farrow's not looking, but Elizabeth Taylor in the greenhouse sees them stealing stuff and she goes round to confront them. I'm not going to go into later things that happen in the film, but there's lots of things that Freud would have a field day about, lost children and the deaths of children and loss of innocence and abusive relationships and the damage that does from a psychological standpoint. So I would say I really enjoyed it and got more out of it the second time that I watched it, with the help of that commentary, for again little details about the paintings and things like that are in the film. It's Mitchum at his most repellent. It's quite a wonderful performance. At one point he confronts Liz Taylor, who's wearing a low-cut top, and he compares her to a cow and mentions udders, and it's really quite nasty. Liz Taylor is actually pretty good in this film. Obviously she takes it down a couple of notches from Boom, but then it would be hard to take it up a couple of notches from Boom. It's just another wonderful, strange, odd Losey film. I think there's a reason perhaps that Losey doesn't get talked about amongst the great filmmakers, is just because his body of work is all over the shop. It's just pretty bizarre. It's even more bizarre or this film might have been more bizarre when you consider Ingrid Bergman was at one point in talks to play the character that Elizabeth Taylor would eventually play. And some trivia: the graveyard, the cemetery that they visit, not only for Liz Taylor's dead daughter, but Mia Farrow's mother, is actually the cemetery that Harold Pinter was buried in later, and Ingrid Bergman's ashes were in as well. So it's an incestuous film in more ways than one. It's another fascinating Losey film. I mean, you could argue whether it's completely successful or not, but it's another fascinating piece of work. The look of it and all the stuff that's going on underneath, which is a common thing in Losey films, and certainly a fascinating Losey Taylor double bill with Boom. So thanks very much for watching this really strange review of a strange film. Next up, it's Losey with a film written by one of the stars of the film. But thanks very much for watching. Secret Ceremony. Please let me know in the comments if you've seen Secret Ceremony and what you think of it, and which one you prefer, Secret Ceremony or Boom, in the Losey Liz Taylor canon. And I should actually say, before I go, at the end of the film, it's not a spoiler, don't worry, Liz Taylor recounts a little parable that I hadn't heard before, and it's quite wonderful, about two mice who fall into a bucket of milk, and one of them cries for help and drowns, and the other one just scrabbles about all night, and in the morning he realises he's standing on some butter. So make of that what you will. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.